Straight all day.
Hey, this is Dre Baldwin. All of you know me, and I want to give a public service announcement to all of you who are speakers, any of you who gets interviewed, any of you who is a thought leader or planning to become one, if you are building a brand, if you are a person who has a story that you believe will be valuable to other people and you want to share it or you have already been sharing it, here is the public service announcement. You are talking too much. You are talking too much. Let me explain what I mean. 3 specific points that I want to give you here. The first one is you must, all of you, and this is something, the reason why I'm bringing this up actually before I go into that is that I do a lot of speaking myself. I listen to a lot of people talk. I coach people who are speakers or want to be speakers, or they want to share their stories, or they want to disseminate their knowledge, their intellectual property, their information to other people in business. In other words, to get paid for doing so, sharing their story, their information, their frameworks, their ideas, whatever it happens to be. And the biggest problem that I see with 97% of you is that you talk too much. Now, I'm not telling you to stop talking and stop trying, but there is a skill to doing it. And if you didn't know that, then that's exactly why you're talking too much. But let me help you out with these 3 points. The first one is the skill of brevity. I talked about this in episode 1738 of the Work on Your Game podcast. What is brevity? It is being exact and concise in the use of words in speech. What does brevity mean? If I was to make that into a more concise way for you to remember it, is for you to say more with less. Make your point and let people get what they need in fewer words. Don't use 20 words when you can get communicated in 5 words. This is very important, especially for those of you who are storytellers. If you have a story in your life and that's part of what you need to give to other people, what you need to do is flesh through that story and find the most important aspects that people need, not tell them everything. They do not need to know everything. I get people who will come to me and ask me questions, and before they get to the question, they tell me their whole life story and the whole backstory of the situation before they get to the question. Any of you ever does that with me and is in written format, you know what I do? I ignore all the backstory and I just look for the question mark in your comment. When I see the question mark, I only read that sentence and then I answer it. I don't read your whole backstory. Do not give people the whole backstory. They don't need it. Nobody cares about your story as much as you do. So number 1 is the skill of brevity. You must learn how to say more with less. And another reason that brevity matters is because it will help people remember what you said. The point of you talking, so people to remember it, right, is not just for you to get exercise in talking. You want people to remember what you said, and the more you talk, the less likely they're going to remember what you said, because now they have more to remember. Give them less to remember with a higher level of impact. Brevity. Point number 2. I call this the 10% rule. I got a couple 10% rules. One of them is the 10% rule of information and action, meaning you only need 10% of the information to actually start taking action. This is a different 10% rule. All right, this is the one when it comes to communication, is that if you are telling a story, people only need about 10% of your entire story in order to get the point. So your job, as I said earlier, is to flesh through your life story or your backstory or the story of your business or whatever it is, and find the 10% that people actually need in order for them to understand the bigger picture. Because the bigger picture is more than just your story, right? Because not too many people care that much about your story. Unless you're super famous, your story alone doesn't sell anything. All right? You can't write a book. You're not going to give a speech. There's not going to be a movie made about your life story unless is a small percentage of people who fit that description. All the rest of us, we got to take our story and figure out how does it apply to something that's more important than just our story, even myself. So your job is to find the 10% in your story that will people can understand it, and then now it's setting the table for the information. So my whole brand is called Work on Your Game. It's not just me telling you my story. Now, does my story contribute to it? Yes, it does. But I tell you enough of my story, just a small piece, that you get that part, and that sets the table for me to tell you the real part, which is the work on your game, discipline, confidence, mental toughness, leadership, communication, the things that you actually want. All right, you didn't come here just to learn my story. All right, I'm not that famous. Maybe one day I will be, but right now I'm not, so I got to work a little bit harder. 10% of the story to get to the main point. 10% rule. That's the second thing. So we got brevity, 10% rule. Number 3, when you are speaking, I don't care if you are being interviewed on a podcast, if you just unmuted yourself and opened up the mic on an audio app like Clubhouse, if you are having your own show, if you got a YouTube channel, if you're just talking to another person and they ask you a question, one thing that you want to never do, this is the number 1 rule of communication, never, never, never bore your audience. You never want people to feel the need to interrupt you because you are talking too much. You never want people to be like, all right, when is this person going to stop speaking? You never want that to happen. And you know when that usually happens? It's when you get too deep into the weeds of your information or your story, and you narcissistically start believing, consciously or unconsciously, that everybody else in the room cares about your story and your information as much as you do. Newsflash, nobody does. Nobody cares about your story as much as you do. Nobody cares about your information as much as you do. Doesn't mean that your story and your information are irrelevant completely. What it means is your job is to flesh out the most valuable pieces of it and give people that and leave all the rest. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of thought leaders and experts make, often early in their careers, and some of them make it throughout their careers because nobody ever gives them the information I'm giving you right now, is that your consumer does not need to know everything that you know. They need to know about 10 to 20% of what you know. All of you have heard the 80-20 rule, right? 80-20 rule applies all across of life. It's actually a principle, not even a rule. It's a principle, meaning it can apply to any discipline. Your job is to look at the 100% of your information, the 100% of your knowledge and your life story, and pick out the 20% that people actually need. They don't. The other 80%, save that for your book, and your most devoted fans, they can read they can get the 100. The most people though, that are not your most devoted fans, the other 95% of the population, they only need 20%. Your job is to find that 20% and never ever talk about the other 80%. Never talk about it ever again. Because when you go into the rest of it, what you do is you start boring your audience, you lose them, they stop paying attention, and they forget the most important parts because you watered it down with too much excess. So those are the three things I'm going to give you. Once again, brevity, say more with less. Number two, the 10% rule. You need to find the 10% of your story and information that matters most to people. That's all they need, because what you're trying to help them do is get a result, not just wow them with your story. And number three, 80-20 rule. Never bore your audience by giving them too much information or too much of your story. Now, I'm telling you all that to tell you this. At my next live event called Work on Your Game Live, which will be here in beautiful Miami. It looks beautiful, right? You can see that? Beautiful Miami, Florida, January 21st and 22nd. That's a Friday and a Saturday. It's a 2-day event. Leadership on day one. On day two is communication. These 3 points that I just gave you, I'm going to be explaining these. I'm going to tell you how to actually apply them, how to start using them. And as a matter of fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do some role playing, and I'm going to have you actually speak in front of the room, and it's not going to be like 1 million people, but speak in front of the room, and you're going to actually learn how to use these skills of brevity, how to use that 10% rule of information, and how to never bore your audience to make sure you get your point across so they remember it, but at the same time, they want more of it. You never want to give too much to the audience. You rather give them too little so that they want more of you, so that they keep coming back. So on day two of Work on Your Game Live, if you like what I just shared with you here in this video, I'm going to go deep into this. I'm going to give you the tactics. I'm going to give you the strategies. I'm going to explain the principles, and we're going to lay some foundation. You're going to leave there with sharpened and heightened communication skills so that your points get across and everybody remembers everything that you wanted them to get. Get your tickets to Work on Your Game Live. I'll put a button right down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description. But if you're watching this on my site, the button is right down below this video. It's workonyourgame.live. Get your tickets. We close the registration on December 15th. Work on your game. Dre, all